I'm 55 years old, and I've been happily married to my husband, David, for 30 years. We have two wonderful, successful kids who are grown and flown. We built a life I am proud of, a life I thought was stable and secure, the kind you settle into for the long haul. David and I have always been a team, the kind of couple our friends look to as the solid ones. That all changed last week, and I'm sitting in my own kitchen feeling like a guest in a life I don't recognize anymore. David's father passed away 3 weeks ago. It was a sad time, of course, but he was 92 and had lived a very full life, so it was more of a bittersweet farewell than a tragedy. David was his only son, and we all knew he would inherit the family lake house, a place that has been the center of his family, and our family, for generations. My children took their first steps on that old porch. David and I had always planned to retire there. It was our end game. The reading of the will was on Tuesday. I didn't go. I assumed it was a formality, just David and his father's lawyer. I was at home making his favorite dinner, coq au vin, thinking we could have a glass of wine and toast to his father's memory and the future we'd have in that house. But when David walked in, the look on his face stopped me cold. He wasn't sad. He was gray. That's the only word for it. He looked hollowed out, like he'd just seen a ghost, and that ghost had told him a terrible secret. I immediately started asking him what was wrong, if the house was being sold, if there were massive debts I didn't know about. He just stood in the hallway, his key still in his hand, and stared at the wall for what felt like an eternity. He couldn't even meet my eyes. He finally spoke, his voice sounding rusty, and told me that his father, in his final act, had apparently decided to play a cosmic joke, as David put it. There was a clause, a stipulation for him to inherit the lake house, which is by far the biggest asset in the estate. He'd inherit it, tax-free, under one very specific, bizarre, and cruel condition. The lawyer apparently said it was highly unusual, but legally binding. The house and its contents only pass to David if he is, and this is the direct legal wording, currently and continuously living in residence with his first wife, Margaret. I've been with David for 30 years. I'm not Margaret. I'm his second wife. I barely even knew Margaret existed. She was a starter marriage from college, lasted maybe 10 months, and he never, ever spoke of her. I just found out, 30 minutes ago from a quick Google search, that Margaret not only exists but currently lives less than an hour away from that lake house. And David, my husband, is upstairs packing a bag and won't tell me where he's going. I followed him upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I felt lightheaded. I was trying to be rational. I mean, the whole thing was absurd, right? It was a joke, like he said, or just a mean-spirited jab from a father who, I now realized, I'd never truly understood. I tried to make a confused laugh, asking him what that even meant, that it was unenforceable, that he just needed to call the lawyer and contest this ridiculous ancient grudge. I was trying to find a logical explanation, but the sight of him pulling shirts from his closet and dropping them into a duffel bag made the words die in my throat. He wasn't packing for a business trip. He was packing old jeans, his worn-out fishing sweatshirt, the practical things he takes when he goes to the lake house. I asked him, my voice starting to shake, what he was doing. I demanded he stop packing and talk to me. He wouldn't look at me. He just kept moving, zipping the bag, and said he needed to go. He needed to think. He needed to figure things out. I asked him where he was going, and he just said out, that he couldn't breathe, that he needed space from all of this. I felt the first real spike of cold fear. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was panic. I stood in the doorway, blocking his path, and I finally flat out asked him, "You're not actually considering this, are you?" I needed him to laugh. I needed him to grab me and say, "Of course not. You're my wife. That's insane." But he didn't. He just sighed, this heavy, exhausted sound, and maneuvered past me in the doorway as if I were a piece of furniture. He told me he didn't know what he was considering, that his head was a mess, and that he'd call me. He just left. He walked down the stairs, and I heard the front door close. I heard his car start and pull out of the driveway. The coq au vin was burning in the oven, filling the house with an acrid smell. I stood at the top of the stairs for I don't know how long, just listening to the silence of my stable life. He didn't just go for a drive. He took the duffel bag with him. It's been 5 hours now. I've called him 4 times, and it's gone straight to voicemail every single time. I'm sitting in the kitchen, having thrown the ruined dinner in the trash, and I'm staring at my computer screen. I still have the search result for Margaret open. And I just realized the small town she lives in? It's the same small town where the lake house is. He didn't come home. I sat in that kitchen until the sun came up, the silence in the house so loud it was screaming. Around 3 a.m., I did the panicked wife cliché and started calling local hospitals, my mind flashing to images of his car wrapped around a tree. But a cold, sick part of me knew he wasn't in a hospital. He wasn't in an accident. He left. He took the bag. At 5 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore and I called my kids. I woke up my daughter, 28F, who was on the West Coast, and she immediately went from sleepy and confused to sharp and terrified in about 10 seconds. I tried to explain the will, the clause. Margaret. She was as floored as I was. She kept saying, "That's not legal, Mom. That can't be legal. It's 2025. You can't force someone to live with an ex." She told me to call our family lawyer, to call her lawyer, to do something. Then I called my son, 30 Mem, who is closer. He was quiet. He knows his father better than anyone. After I told him David packed a bag, he just sighed and said, "Mom, where did he go? Does he even know this woman?" The truth is, I had no idea. After I got off the phone with them, both of them promising to be on the next flight home, I went back to my computer. The coffee I'd made tasted like ashes. I opened that search result for Margaret again. This time I dug deeper. It's amazing what you can find when you're fueled by 30 years of betrayed loyalty and a pot of stale coffee. She has a public social media profile. She's a potter. She sells her stuff at the local farmer's market in that small town by the lake. Her page was full of pictures of vases, her dog, and sunrises over the water. She looked nice. She looked like a kind, normal woman in her late 50s, with laugh lines and graying hair. It made me feel sicker. I scrolled. I scrolled back months, then a year, just looking for anything. A clue. A connection. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it. It was a picture from 2 months ago. A photo of her little dog sitting on a porch. A porch I recognized. It was the porch of the lake house. I felt the blood drain from my face. I thought, no, it can't be. Maybe she was just walking by. But then I saw the comments, and there was one from my father-in-law's account. "Barnaby looks happy, Em. Glad you're keeping an eye on the old place." M. He called her M. My father-in-law, who hadn't called me by my name in a decade, who just grunted at me at family dinners. He was friends with her. They were in contact. This wasn't some long-dead memory from 40 years ago. This was active. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone when it finally lit up on the counter. It was 7:03 a.m. A text from David. My heart leaped, thinking he was sorry. He was on his way home. He'd made a terrible mistake. But the message wasn't an apology. It was just 6 words. "I'm at the lake house. She's here." I stared at those 6 words. "I'm at the lake house. She's here." It was so matter-of-fact, so informational. Not an apology, not a desperate plea for understanding, just a status update, as if he were telling me the plumber had arrived. I didn't text back. My hand was shaking so much I could barely unlock my phone, but I hit the call button. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to hear the lie, the panic, the guilt. He answered on the 3rd ring. He sounded calm and tired. I, on the other hand, was not calm. I started screaming. I'm not proud of it, but I was hysterical. I was demanding to know what "she's here" meant. Was she in the house? Why was he at the house? Why was he talking to her and not his wife of 30 years? He waited for me to run out of steam, and then he told me to lower my voice, that he couldn't explain if I was going to shriek at him. And that's when I heard it. A faint voice in the background. A woman's voice, murmuring something I couldn't understand. "Who is that?" I whispered, the fight just vanishing from me, replaced by a cold, heavy dread. "It's Margaret," he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. We're having coffee. I went to her house this morning. I had to." He said he'd driven straight to her address when he left our house. He said he had to find out if she knew, if this was her scheme. He said he found her in her garden. And the worst part? She knew. She told him that his father had visited her about a month before he passed. He'd sat in her little potter's studio and told her his intentions. He'd apologized for how David had discarded her all those years ago and told her he was going to make things right. He was going to give his son a chance to fix his one great mistake. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I asked David what he told her, what he said to this woman who was plotting with his dead father to erase me. I didn't say anything, he said, and his voice was defensive now. I'm just trying to understand the situation. She's just as stunned as I am. Stunned? I practically spat the word. Stunned? Or is she measuring for new curtains, David? Why are you with her at the lake house? There was a long pause. I heard the clink of a coffee mug being set down on a saucer. It was such a small domestic sound, and it felt like a betrayal sharper than a knife. The lawyer is on his way here, David finally said, his voice flat. He's going to meet us at the house. He needs to explain the terms, to both of us. He needs to verify that Margaret is, well, that she's Margaret. My mind was spinning. Verify? What terms? David, get in the car and come home. Right now. We will fight this. This is insane. Just wait, he said, sounding like he was talking to a difficult child. We don't know all the facts yet. We just need to hear what the lawyer says. We need to hear what the options are. The only option is you come home to your wife. I'll call you after, he said, and the line went dead. He hung up on me. He's at our future home, a home I've painted, a home I've hosted Thanksgiving in, a home where I rocked my children to sleep, and he's having coffee with his college ex-wife and waiting for a lawyer to explain the options. My kids are on planes, flying home to a house their father has abandoned, and I've just realized he's not fighting this. He's listening to it. He hung up on me. I stared at the call-ended screen for what felt like a full minute, the silence of the house rushing back in. He was in our house, our future, having a calm, rational discussion about options with a ghost, while I was 100 miles away, breaking apart in the kitchen we'd picked out the tile for together. The betrayal of that one click, him ending the call to get back to her, felt as sharp and final as a door slamming shut. My first call was to our lawyer, the man who did our own wills. I was rambling, I'm sure, and I had to repeat the living with his first wife part 3 times before he fully grasped it. He was quiet. He used words like antiquated and bizarrely punitive. He said that while it's strange, it's not automatically illegal. He said the term living with is a legal nightmare, dangerously vague. Does it mean sharing a roof? Sharing finances? He said he needed to see the full document, which of course he couldn't. He told me to sit tight. I couldn't sit tight. I just paced. For hours I walked from the kitchen to the living room and back, staring at the photos on the mantel. Us at our wedding. Us with the kids at the lake house. Our entire 30-year life, right there, suddenly looking like a lie. My son, Mark, 30 Maybe, was the first to arrive. He must have sped from the airport. The moment he walked in and saw my face, he didn't even say, hello. He just grabbed me in a hug so tight it hurt, and I finally broke. I sobbed into his shirt, just repeating, he's with her, over and over. Mark was quiet, but he was radiating an anger that was palpable. He's lost his mind, Mom, he said, his voice low. This is a trick. She's playing him. My daughter, Sarah, 28F, got in 2 hours later. She's the opposite of Mark. She came in hot, on her laptop, already having researched legal precedent on the flight. She was throwing out terms like undue influence and testamentary capacity and spousal abandonment. She was ready for war. Having them there, one on each side of me at the kitchen table, made me feel less like I was floating away. Then, around 6 p.m., just as Sarah was looking up divorce lawyers, just in case, my phone rang. It was David. I stared at it. Mark just nodded grimly. I put it on speakerphone. David, I said. My voice was cold, flat. All the hysteria was gone. Hey, he said. He still sounded exhausted. Not guilty, not sorry, just tired. So, the lawyer's gone. We've talked it all through. I noticed the we. And, I said, it's pretty straightforward. The wording is residing in the same primary residence. For a minimum of 6 months. After 6 months, the deed transfers clear to me. My son Mark put his head in his hands. Sarah looked like she was going to throw the phone. So what did you tell him, Dad? Mark suddenly said, his voice hard as rocks. There was a long pause. David clearly hadn't known the kids were there. Mark, you're home? Yeah, I'm home. We're both home. What did you tell him, Dad? What option did you pick? Another agonizing silence. I could hear a bird chirping on his end. He was on the porch. Our porch. She's willing to do it, he said, his voice cautious. Just as a friend. To help me? She said she doesn't want anything. She just wants to help me honor my father. She said we can just be roommates. For 6 months. And then the house it's ours. For the family. You are an idiot, Sarah whispered. But David heard her. Sarah, you don't understand, he snapped. It's complicated. A favor? I finally said, my voice dangerously quiet. She's helping you? David, are you listening to yourself? You're talking about moving this stranger into the lake house? No, he said, and my heart stopped. That's the other thing. She can't leave her place. She has her pottery kiln, her business, her dog. The lawyer said, residing in the same primary residence. It doesn't have to be his house. I didn't understand. What are you saying, David? The clause would also be satisfied, he said, and I could hear the strange twisted logic he was trying to sell himself on. It would also be satisfied if I moved in with her. For a full 10 seconds, nobody spoke. The only sound on our end was the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at Mark. I looked at Sarah. They were both staring at the phone on the table with a kind of murderous disbelief. Sarah's knuckles were white where she was gripping her own phone. Mark just looked broken. You're going to live with her, I finally said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I was just trying to see how the words felt in my mouth, and they tasted like poison. It's not living with, not really, he said, and the weaseling in his voice, the attempt to rationalize, made me feel a hot white rage I have never felt in my life. It's a formality. It's like a long-term business trip. 6 months. I'll get my mail sent there. I'll sleep there. That's it. It's a roommate situation. Dad, Sarah exploded. I think it was the loudest I've ever heard her. Are you insane? You're going to abandon Mom, abandon your wife of 30 years, to go shack up with your college girlfriend to get a house? What is wrong with you? It's not just a house, he shouted back, and for the first time he sounded angry, not just tired. It's my legacy. It's our legacy. It's your inheritance. It's the place I promised your mother we would retire. I am doing this for us. Do not, I said, my voice shaking but low. Do not you dare put this on me. Do not you dare say this is for me. This is for you and that house. It's a pragmatic solution, he insisted, and I realized he'd been coached. These were not his words. This was lawyer speak. This was her speak. And what does she get out of this pragmatic solution? Mark asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Just the joy of your company for 180 days? Is she a saint, Dad? There was a long, terrible pause. I knew there was another part. David, I warned. Tell me. She doesn't want money, he said, hedging. She's lonely. She told me she's been lonely for a long time. My dad was one of the only people who still checked in on her. She wants to be part of the family. I didn't understand. What? She wants to be forgiven. She wants us to be friends. All of us. She wants a place at the table. Her condition for helping me is that she's not a secret, that she gets to come to holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, as a family friend. I felt the floor drop out from under me. He wasn't just choosing the house over me, he was choosing to replace me, or at the very least, force me to share the table with the woman he was living with. No, I said. Honey, just be reasonable. No, absolutely not. You don't get to do this. You pick. Right now, David. You pick the house or you pick me. You can't have both. That's not fair, he said, his voice pleading. Why are you making me choose? Why can't you just see the big picture? It's just 6 months. It's a business deal. It's my life, I sobbed, the cold finally breaking. It's our marriage. I have to go, he he said abruptly. I can't do this on the phone. She's made dinner. We have to sign the papers for the lawyer. He was having dinner with her, after telling me he was moving in with her, after telling me she was going to be at my Thanksgiving table. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say anything. I just reached out and hit the end call button on the speakerphone, cutting him off mid-sentence. The three of us sat there in the ringing silence. My son looked at me, his eyes full of a pain that mirrored my own. "He's not coming home, is he?" Sarah whispered, and I knew the answer. "He's already gone." The silence in the kitchen after I hung up was deafening. My children just stared at me, their faces a mixture of pity and a white-hot rage I'd never seen in them. Sarah was the first to move. She took a long, sharp breath, and all the frantic energy she'd had on the flight home just crystallized. It focused. She looked at me, her eyes hard. "Mom," she said, her voice completely level. "He's not having a mental breakdown. He's not confused. This is a calculation. He's chosen a house over his family." She slid her laptop across the table. "I already have a list. The top 3 divorce lawyers in the state. I'll make the calls in the morning. We're freezing the accounts." A few hours ago, I would have gasped. I would have told her not to be so dramatic, that he was her father. But sitting there, listening to the echo of him telling me his ex-wife was making dinner for him, I just nodded. I felt nothing. A vast, cold, empty space had opened up where my marriage used to be. Mark just got up, wordlessly cleared my ruined coq au vin from the trash where I dumped it hours ago, and started washing the pan. The simple domestic act of him cleaning up my mess, his father's mess, made me want to cry again, but I was out of tears. We didn't sleep in our bedrooms. The kids grabbed blankets and slept in the living room with me, like we were having a slumber party after the end of the world. Mark was on the recliner, Sarah on the floor, and I was on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying 30 years in my head. Had I been a fool? Had this Margaret been a shadow in the background this whole time? Had his father's casual disdain for me been a sign of this all along? I realized with a sick lurch that my father-in-law had never liked me. He'd always called me David's second wife, but he'd said it with a little smirk, like it was an inside joke. I see now. It was. At 5:17 a.m., my phone, which I'd left on the coffee table, lit up. It was Sarah's phone, too. We both sat up in the dark. It wasn't a call or a text. It was a social media notification. Sarah, being Sarah, had apparently stayed up half the night and started following Margaret the Potter's public business page. A new post had gone up at 5:15 a.m. My hands were shaking as I opened the app. It was a picture. It wasn't of pottery. It was a photo of the sunrise over the lake, taken from the porch of our lake house. On the old wooden railing, there were 2 coffee mugs. One was a rustic handmade one I'd seen on her site. The other was David's. It was a huge, ugly, world's best dad mug our kids had given him as a joke 15 years ago. He took it everywhere. And the caption, posted for all her customers and friends to see, read, "Some things are worth the wait. So happy to be starting a new chapter and helping an old dear friend find his way home again. The lake is healing." I stared at it. Helping him find his way home. A new chapter. She wasn't a roommate. She wasn't a favor. She was positioning herself as the heroine of this story, the one who was healing him. Healing him from what? From me? And then I saw it. In the bottom corner of the photo, just visible on the porch boards, was the edge of a familiar green canvas. It was the duffel bag he'd packed. He'd never even planned to come back. It's been 4 months since I wrote that. I'm not in the house anymore. I'm in a small, bright apartment in the city, and the boxes are almost all unpacked. My kids did that. They've been my rocks. That social media post. It was a gift. It was the shot of ice-cold water I needed. The grief just vanished, and what was left was resolve. The vagueness was gone. I wasn't a confused, grieving wife. I was a woman watching her replacement set her mug on the table, while my son Mark just sat there, shaking his head and muttering, "He's a fool." My daughter Sarah was already on a warpath. She didn't say a word. She just got up, went to the kitchen, and started making a pot of coffee. When she came back, she handed me a cup and said, "Okay, Mom, here's what we do. You are not going to be reasonable. You are not going to wait. You are going to be done. And I was. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I didn't send him the screenshot. I let him have his sunrise with his old dear friend. Instead, at 8:01 a.m., I called the first lawyer on Sarah's list. I'll call her Anna. Anna was a shark, and she was exactly what I needed. By 10 a.m., she had filed an emergency petition to freeze our joint assets, citing spousal abandonment and dissipation of marital funds. It took David 48 hours to notice. He called me, and he wasn't calm or tired anymore. He was screaming. He was screaming that his card was declined at the grocery store. He was screaming that I had no right to do this, that I was ruining everything, that I was sabotaging our future for a temporary arrangement. I let him finish. I was holding the phone so far from my ear that Sarah, sitting across from me, could hear his tinny voice raging. When he finally stopped to take a breath, I just said, "David, what future? You're living with another woman. You made your choice." "It's a business deal," he shrieked. "Then you're a terrible businessman," I said, and I hung up. It was the last time we spoke without lawyers. The last 4 months have been a blur of legal papers. My lawyer, Anna, is incredible. She argued that the lake house, while technically an inheritance, was also the central point of a 30-year marital plan. His deal with Margaret, to cut me and my children out, to abandon his legal wife to cohabitate, as the filing says, was an act of profound bad faith. The kids have been amazing. They've refused to speak to him. They blocked his number. They blocked Margaret. Sarah wrote him one final email. She attached Margaret's new chapter post and just wrote, "You wanted the house more than you wanted your family. Congratulations, you got it. Enjoy the view. You've lost your children and you've lost your wife. I hope it was worth it." So, here's where we are. The divorce isn't final, but the separation is. I'm getting the house we lived in. I'm in the process of selling it, and I'm getting the lion's share of the proceeds. He's not fighting for it. He can't. He's at the lake. He and Margaret are 4 months into their 6-month sentence. I hear through the grapevine that Margaret's post was a disaster. All our mutual friends and David's extended family, who adored me, saw it for what it was. A victory lap. A smug, classless announcement. David, apparently, has been uninvited from 2 of his cousins' weddings. He got his house. He'll get the deed in 2 more months. And he'll have it. He'll have this big empty house, a legacy from a manipulative father, and a roommate who has alienated him from his entire life. Me? I'm sitting on my new small balcony. It's not a lake view, but it's mine. My daughter is coming over to help me hang pictures. My son calls me every night. I lost 30 years of my life to a man who, when it came down to it, would trade me for a building. I've learned that the life I thought was so solid was built on his, not ours. And I've learned that I'm strong enough to build my own. It's a late start at 55, but at least I'm not making coffee for a man who's already left.